Hello everybody, Rowland here again today. Today I'm going to talk about Sword and Thistle, the second book by S.O. Rowland in his Tales of Aedrea series, the first of which being Cursed Cocktails. Now, while most books, the sequel is going to take the same characters and the same story and just continue that narration, Tales of Aedrea is slightly different. This is a separate story in the same world as Cursed Cocktails, and in fact, there is a bit of crossover. Chapter 3 of this book, appropriately titled Cursed Cocktails, is the same event or same meeting in Cursed Cocktails in the chapter titled The Eastbourne Dinner Cult. In which case, while the dialogue is identical, it's not just a copy and paste from one book to the other. Outside of the dialogue, all the events, while the same, are actually written differently because they're from different characters' perspectives. That's kind of setting up where we are going with Sword and Thistle, because our main character, Dobbin, here, is actually hired by this Eastbourne dinner cult, routinely going after magical creatures such as slimes or magical plants, in this case a particular rare mushroom, for them to eat. So nothing nefarious. And this is technically a cozy fantasy, just like the first one, because it's not exactly high stakes. The biggest stakes are, yes, our adventurer's life, because he's going someplace relatively dangerous. But this isn't end of the world stakes. The flip side is, because there are some, and I'm trying to not be super spoiler here, we'll say a bit of a tragic past or traumatic event in his past, Dobbin works alone. Because of the events going on in this book, he's forced into a situation where he can't work alone. And because of that, it actually helps to heal some of that past trauma. And again, I'm not going to go into specifics because I don't want to ruin a fun story. I do like these books by S.O. Rowland. I'm starting to really enjoy the idea of cozy fantasy. They are nice reads in between more heavy-handed books. Even with our main character learning, if you'll forgive the turn of phraser, learning to care again, learning to care about other people, learning to work as a team, or just not be by himself. It's not heavy-handed. It's not being slapped across your face. It's a fairly light tone. It's got some humorous moments, although it's clearly not written to be a comedy. And I, for one, quite enjoy what I'm reading here. I'm going to give this a 3 or 3.5, because while I think they're great reads, I do know fantasy is not for everybody. Definitely have some of our fantasy tropes, though, with dwarves and ghosts and goblins and, well, the same type of creatures you would run into in most fantasy stories, and that's not a bad thing. It's a comfortable story. It's supposed to be comfortable, because the idea is you are going to be cozy as you're reading this book, hence the term cozy fantasy. I, for one, am eager to get my hands on the third book. Now, I personally read the Kickstarter edition, which is more or less the same as the standard edition. I just get a fancy dust jacket here, some vellum inserts, a few other small bonus items because I did the Kickstarter. It's my understanding that when he does do a Kickstarter for the third book in the series, which may or may not be released already, that is the Halfling's Harvest, he's going to change how he does these Kickstarters, and more specifically how the books are set up in there. And that is because he has been doing these by himself, packaging them up, putting the dust jackets on. So likely what he's going to do is start back over with book 1, and then doing book 2, and finally book 3, potentially in a leather-bound type format. Certainly a more deluxe or premium version than these, which are nice, don't get me wrong. But more along the lines of, say, Gunmetal Gods. And I'm pointing that specific one out because that is the next book I'm going to be reading. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but for the last couple of review videos, I've intentionally stuck a book on the other side, and that ends up being the next book I'm in line for me to read. But I'm curious to see how those work out, because I do want to get the next book, but I do love me those premium editions. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching this video, and have a wonderful time reading through your own personal library.